Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be going through the TBC announcements and all the changes and everything, and giving you my opinion on each of them, and have timestamps in the description below to all the different topics. But let's get right into it. First thing was phases, right? So for TBC Classic, there will be 5 different phases, and they're going to be spreading out the raid tiers. They're taking things pretty slow, which I'm very happy with, meaning Tier 4 will be out on launch. Tempest Keep and Serpent Shrine Cavern will be in Phase 2. Again, likely Phase 2 will not be very long. Or sorry, Phase 1 won't be very long, and Phase 2 will come out pretty quickly. Phase 3 will be Hyjal and Black Temple. Phase 4 is Zul'Aman. Phase 5, Sunwell patch. So really happy about this. I think if they moved up raids like SSE and Tempest Keep to launch, I feel like the expansion would just feel very short. And I think there's a lot of content in TBC, a lot of fun things to do, and I think it would be a shame if too many raids were released too quickly and people just blew through them and then just stopped doing a lot of the old raids. So gives people plenty of time to enjoy each of the raids, and as we move through the phases, I think this will really extend the longevity of TBC Classic, and just if otherwise, if they would have released all the raids like in original TBC, Serpent Shrine Cavern, Tempest Keep, and Hyjal were all in the game. When you walk through the Dark Portal, right? And in 2021, with everyone knowing exactly how the attunements work and everyone preparing for all the fights and know what's to come, that content would have been blasted through very quickly. So really, really happy with the phase announcement. In my opinion, the single biggest announcement of the entire BlizzCon, and the most influential on the success of the game. I think it's a huge deal that the patches are spread out like this myself. All right, so next big thing, there were drums. Leatherworking drums are likely to be changed in Burning Crusade Classic. If you listen to the interview, you'll hear Brian Birmingham say that he basically wants drums to be good and feel like it's important that a leatherworker uses drums and helps the group, but they don't want it to feel like everyone needs to have drums. So that just might give you some insight on how they're going to change them, but they're looking to change them so that 20 to 25 people in the raid don't feel like they have to get them to be optimal. And if they want to do as much as they can to help the raid, they don't want to feel like players have to have leatherworking. So I'm excited for that. I thought drums were overrated, but regardless of what I thought, a lot of people were still going to get drums as they were optimal. Doesn't matter if they're not a huge increase, but optimal is optimal, and a lot of people were going to go leatherworking no matter what. If it was, as long as it was better than the second best profession or the third best profession, they were going to go leatherworking. So I think this is overall a good change just for how people are playing, Classic, and how people are going to play TBC Classic. I think this will be good that, drums are adjusted. They're also adding boosts. You can get a level 58 boost. You can only use the level 58 boost on a Draenei, or sorry, you cannot use it on a Draenei or a Blood Elf. You can only use it on the old races, and you only get 1 per account, and you have to purchase it. It is a paid boost. And I mean, to give you an idea of the price, paid boosts in retail are $60. So I wouldn't be super shocked if it was also $60 in TBC Classic. Now, I'm not super stoked about the boost. They were marketing it like it was for new players to catch up with everyone. But I personally don't think boosting is good for a new player. I think they're going to be very overwhelmed. And I also think a new player would really enjoy their journey from 1 to 60, even with TBC out, especially because of how they release the phases. I mean, even if you start on launch, you have plenty of time. You're not going to fall super far behind because there's only Tier 4 being released at launch. So very disappointed about the boosts. I do not think boosts are good for new players. I don't think Blizzard does either. I think this is a move for money, and I guess the boost will be most useful for someone who's re-rolling for TBC or trying to switch their main and they don't want the level. But even then, when TBC pre-patch hits, I'm assuming, and we'll get to the patch in a second here. Actually, maybe we'll jump to it first. The patch is going to be 2.4.3, and you're going to get like your mount at level 30. There's going to be a lot of XP changes in the latest patch of TBC, meaning not only do you have less XP to hit 60, but you're also going to have, your mount 10 levels earlier. Quests give more experience. Dungeon quests especially give more experience. And, you've got new quest hubs in the game. So, for example, in Dustswallow Marsh, there's like a goblin town called like Mudsprocket or something that's going to show up, offer more quests. So in my opinion, I think the boost is silly because TBC leveling is going to be faster, easier, and it's going to be a new change of pace. So even coming from a player who may not want to level another character, it's going to be different this time around, right? When TBC comes out, or presumably all of this will be in the pre-patch as well. When the pre-patch comes out, it should be enjoyable to level, as it's going to be new content, new talent trees. It should be a change of pace, and I do think that your first couple characters should be fun going through TBC, even if you've played Classic. So for those reasons, not super stoked about the boost. I still think in games like Classic and TBC Classic, these are old school games, old school MMO style RPG games, and I don't think boosting, paid boost has a place in these games. But a lot of people were paying gold to be boosted by mages. In TBC, they'll pay paladins to be boosted. So people are going to boost anyway, so I understand why this is being offered. Just my opinion on it. So back to the latest patch, I talked about how it will influence leveling, but they are going to be releasing TBC on the 2.4.3 patch, which is the last patch in TBC. And while they may make some tweaks and stuff, that is going to be like where they're use the talent trees from there. They're going to use the items, everything is going to be 2.4.3, and they may make small tweaks on when stuff becomes available. And specifically, they might adjust like boss difficulty, and we'll talk about that in a sec too with pre-nerf bosses. But that is going to be the patch. And so some people will be complaining that 2.4.3 is going to make the game easier because it's the best version of items and the best version of the talents, and effectively your character is buffed to Sunwell patch in terms of the talents and everything. However, on the other hand, stuff's not going to change out from under people. You're not going to randomly, patch day, new phase comes out and Stone Form no longer removes blind out of the blue. This time, your Stone Form won't remove blind, all of, TBC. So, there's pros and cons to each. Personally, I was expecting this, so I don't have too many strong opinions on 2.4.3, just because I knew based on how they did Classic, they were going to do it this way. They don't want items changing for people. They want to take a simple route for development on Blizzard's end as well, and so I think this is expected. May see some people disappointed that it makes the game easier, but alas, that is what we're getting. Back over to Pre-Nerf Content. They announced that they're going to be doing Pre-Nerf content for the raid bosses. I think this is good news for most players. I think a lot of people wanted the raids to be a little harder. Pretty common sentiment that people were disappointed with some of the difficulty in Classic. I myself don't really care, as I'm a more PvP guy than PvE, but I think also increasing the difficulty in TBC is a lot better than increasing it in Classic, because in Classic, when you increase difficulty, that just stresses more world buffs, more consumes, whereas in TBC, you've got a much more limited set of consumes. And so I think when you make the content harder, there may be concerns of compositions getting more and more, optimized, and maybe specs that are on the outer niche of being playable may get pushed out in the more competitive guilds, but there's still going to be, 95% of guilds are going to be accepting everyone, and everything's going to be, just fine, even with the pre-nerf content. Again, the game is 15 years old. We know the fights. It's not going to be, crazy hard, but I think this will up the difficulty for a lot of people looking forward to it. So I'd say overall, good change. Now over to the clone and how character copying works. Now initially in the leak, it was leaked that you could copy your character to a classic realm when TBC comes out if you wanted to keep playing classic, or you could just go to TBC. They have later announced that there is a clone option that costs money. So just to fully explain how it works, when you log in on patch day, it's going to take a snapshot of your character and it's going to ask you, do you want to, and by the way, a snapshot just means it's going to take the data of your character and it's going to save it for later. And it's going to ask you, okay, do you want to play Burning Crusade or do you want to play Classic? If you choose to go to Classic, you can later choose to go to TBC by using the snapshot, but your new Classic progress won't be updated. So if you choose to go to, you want to continue in Classic and you raid Naxxramas, you get new items. If you then decide you want to go to TBC, you cannot use those items that you got since the patch day came out. So again, it takes a point in time picture of everything your character has right as the patch comes out. And at any point you can pay to access, TBC or Classic, depending on which you initially went with, right? But it is free when the patch first comes out, to pick the direction you want to go. So it's kind of confusing, but basically you got your 60 character, TBC comes out, you can choose to play TBC or Classic, and if you change your mind later, you can pay to gain access to the other version. I am very happy with their solution. They did not initially have the, talk about snapshotting, and I think the way they've described it is exactly how I wanted it to work, except for the charge, the money part. But I'm way more happy that they're taking a snapshot and you can change your mind, and that down the line you can pay. I was very worried that you were going to have to make a decision when the game first came out and you couldn't undo it in any way. So happy that they're doing it that way. Again, it still kind of sucks that you have to pay, but the expansion's free, so it's not the end of the world. But people with a lot of characters that want to play TBC and Classic are gonna, they're gonna take a hit paying for each of the characters, and hopefully it's just like a service fee. I really think it would be nice of Blizzard to just offer this as a service fee for like the data. I mean, they don't have to do that, but that's what they'd sell it as. I hope they did that and it's like, less than $5 per character, instead of marketing it as like a transfer. If they market it as a transfer or a copy, it could be expensive, and I really hope that's not the case. So ultimately, I'm happy with the solution that they're providing here so that you can play Classic, you can play TBC, and you have the freedom to change your mind later, but not happy about the price, especially if it's not just a service fee. All right, so moving past that, we talked about Pre-Nerf, talked about the XP, Seal of Blood, and Seal of Vengeance. For Paladins, you're going to be able to use the other faction seal. Seal of Blood was super strong for Ret Paladins on the Horde, and it just felt bad as an Alliance Paladin to just know that, going into TBC, you're just going to be worse than Horde Paladins, i.e. Blood Elf Paladins. So I think this is a good change. Not a huge thing, but it will be huge for Ret Paladins on the Alliance side. So I think that is nice as well. I'm not a big Paladin guy. This may lead to some different rotations and stuff for Paladins if you're able to use both. I don't know if they're going to twist them, or if having both at the same time is going to offer new ways to play. Not a Paladin guy, so that also is a possibility that you might be able to do new things as well. So just keep that in mind. No gold cap on transfers. I think this was expected. I mean, again, my solution is I think Fresh should be the solution to all the economy issues and all of the problems with people coming in overgeared, overprepared, have all the professions ready to immediately go into TBC and massive stockpiles of gold. I think Fresh is the only solution, so I am not surprised there's no gold cap. I was expecting no gold cap. I do not think a gold cap fixes the issues, because it would punish the inexperienced players or the newer players that saved up gold, because they wouldn't be as savvy at converting their gold into materials to carry into TBC. And if they start blocking gold and materials going into TBC, Stuff's going to get really awkward. You're not going to be able to level jewel crafting because there's going to be no copper bars. It's just, the economy would be really weird for a very long time, where stuff like copper bars and Peace Bloom is going to be insanely expensive on the new realm because no one's picking it. Meanwhile, on the classic realms, it's like, Peace Bloom's worthless. So a lot of weird stuff would happen if they barred you from bringing in materials, and it's just there's no solution. It's also not fair to the player that saved up 5k gold and farmed for a while, that they can't bring it in on their character. I don't think it's necessarily fair that people that worked hard to prepare are unable to bring in their gold. And while you might look at the people with 200k gold cap, they're going to manipulate everything. There's a lot of players that just farmed 5k gold just for a mount, and it's going to suck if they can't. They farmed all that for nothing. So expecting this, not surprised. I think Fresh is the solution. We'll talk more about Fresh in a bit. Anyway, the last thing that I have for like a Wowhead post here is Burning Crusade Classic LFG tool may use modern group finder conveniences. So before you freak out, there was an LFG tool back in the Burning Crusade to help you find groups. They're not going to do auto grouping. This is not like Wrath of the Lich King looking for dungeon, where you queue for a random dungeon, you're teleported there, the group is automatically formed. That is not what they are offering. However, I still have some concerns. For any of you that have not played retail, they have their LFG tool allows people to apply for your group, and their name just sits there until they decide to cancel their application or they join a different group. And so how this works is essentially you've got a tab open with a bunch of people applying, and you're able to just let them sit there, let them build up, and then you can choose from a list of 20 people who you want to invite to your group. I'm a little concerned if they apply that into TBC, that players are going to be, especially if you've got a full group of like a healer, tank, 2 DPS, we just need 1 more DPS. If you go into the LFG tool and you say looking for 1 more DPS, heroic slave pens, you're going to get 1 million people signing up, right? And in the position of the group leader, you can just wait for 20 people to sign up and then just invite the most meta spec, right? Invite Warlock, because Seed of Corruption does crazy damage in dungeons. And, the other specs that aren't considered the best in dungeons may end up getting invited a lot less if they go with that approach to the dungeon, the looking for dungeon or the looking for group tool. What I would prefer is that you still have to go through whispers. This also protects against there being some sort of add-on that lists item level or gear score. If people start using something like that in TBC, that would really suck if you're applying for a group and there's some sort of gear score add-on, and because of the looking for group tool, they just see everyone's item level and in everyone's class, and they just go with flavor, or not flavor of the month, but the meta class that's really great in dungeons, and then they go for the high item level and just invite them. Now we're back to retail and a lot of the problems retail has with their group finder and getting into groups. So I really hope they just clean up the UI a little bit and they're not actually going to use the apply and the apply functionality, because you don't actually have to speak, right? There's no interaction. You click on a group, you hit apply, and they can just directly invite you in retail. I don't want that for TBC. I want you to still have to whisper. I think it's fine if you just have a way to list your groups and they clean up the UI a little bit, make it a little easier to use. But I do not think they should replace the whispering that you have to do with a tool to easily, add people to the group. Because number one, you're not speaking. Number two, if you're not receiving whispers of people interested in the group, first of all, if you're getting whispered, you're more likely to invite the person. Second of all, if you're getting 15 whispers, it's hard to manage who is who. Is this person still want to join the group, right? You're more likely to just invite the first person that works out. Whereas how the LFG tool works in retail, you can just take your time and wait for a bunch of people to sign up. And that unless they cancel their application, they're still willing to join your group. And I think it'll just make less like a classic experience. So a little concerned, but don't be too panicked. It will not auto form groups. It won't teleport you to the dungeon. It's not the looking for dungeon tool from Wrath. But I have a couple concerns there. Beyond that, there's a couple other things that I don't have like a Wowhead post here, but I just have a little notepad here. Fresh. There was a question during the Q&A that they did at BlizzCon asking if there would be Fresh Classic servers on the launch of TBC, and they said there are no Fresh Start realms being released until, and no scheduled releases for Fresh Start realms. Maybe after TBC has a nice, a good steady launch, they'll look into releasing other stuff. So definitely no Fresh Classic servers, but I interpreted that as also no Fresh TBC because they specifically said no Fresh Start realms whatsoever. I'm also not expecting Fresh TBC servers because they now have a paid character copy service and a paid boost service that would obviously not be allowed on Fresh. That's the whole point of a Fresh TBC server. You start at 1, you start over. And so I think it's unlikely we see Fresh. It sounds like we're not going to see it based on what Holly said in the Q&A. And so I'm very disappointed about this. I think that Fresh would have been a great way for new players to get into TBC instead of boosting, which is going to leave players overwhelmed and they're skipping over the 1 through 60 journey I think they'd really enjoy. Fresh would have been, I think, a great way for new players to play. And also keep in mind, Fresh it's not just boring 1 through 60, no new content. Again, like I mentioned before, the leveling experience is different in TBC. The dungeons give different items, like they're blue now. The bosses in the dungeons are different level. They're a tighter spread, meaning that instead of the last boss being 15 levels higher than the trash outside the instance, it's much smaller range of levels, and it's easier to group up for dungeons. So it's just, I think a lot of people will enjoy their leveling experience in TBC even through the classic zones, at least the first few times through. So I think it's a shame no Fresh is offered. I do think it's the only solution to the economy and the only solution to people coming in with their geared up level 60 characters, full professions maxed out, ready to go, and alts ready to have like alchemy and tailoring alts to do cooldowns for the equivalent of the leather workers making the cured hides and the equivalent of the alchemists selling their transmutes, right? So a little disappointed about that. New races pre-patch. So you can play Blood Elf and Draenei in the pre-patch. We don't know when it's going to be yet, but the pre-patch will come out prior to TBC Classic and give you time to level up a Draenei or a Blood Elf. I'm down with this. I'm excited myself to level some of these races before the game actually comes out. I think it's cool, but the combination of being able to level before TBC Classic comes out and boosts has me a little concerned for when the game officially comes out and TBC Classic is underway. I'm a little concerned that new players won't be in the best spot, as they're either going to boost, which I think is going to lead to a higher chance they quit, or they're going to level 1 to 60, and there's no longer a bunch of Draenei's and Blood Elves leveling with them on launch. Those people already leveled pre-patch. So a little concerned that leveling is going to be in a really weird spot on launch of TBC Classic and for a little while following that, especially with no Fresh option. But I mean, a lot of people don't care about leveling anyway. Just a little concerned that new players might not have the best experience with the way they're releasing things. But myself, I'm happy that the new races are going to be released in pre-patch. And then also the fact that there's going to be a pre-patch means you can probably do some leveling too when the pace of leveling speeds up, and people can enjoy that too before the game comes out. No spell batching. I think we already knew this was going to be the case because of the changes they made on the classic PTR. It's unclear if no spell batching and 10 millisecond spell batching are the same thing. I believe they are. I mean, the 10 millisecond spell batching is essentially nothing. So I think that's what it's going to be, is 10 millisecond spell batching, but that's realistically no batching. It's a tiny window. So that is what I'm expecting, but I guess it's possible they maybe may reduce it even more, but I'm expecting the 10 millisecond batching to be the no spell batching. Layering, they're planning on doing layering on the launch for Hellfire Peninsula. They're probably going to have an insane amount of layers. Again, I think this was expected. Not a fan of layering myself, but Blizzard has decided to go with really high caps on their servers this time around, rather than the original TBC servers. And if you're going to allow in 3 to 5 times more players on the servers, you got to do something. I would ultimately prefer to just have the smaller servers, but I know a lot of people really like big mega servers. So most people are probably going to be fine with this. I think most people are expecting layering. And lastly, just a quick little tidbit. They just said that they're willing to make changes like the Black Lotus change where they see fit. So if they feel like the servers are too crowded and people are not able to get limited resources, they will make changes as they see fit, but they're not currently planning on making any changes to like the Netherwing egg or specific rare spawns that are going to be contested. They want people to fight over them, and but at a future point they might make a change like the Black Lotus change where they increase spawns if they think there are not enough to go around on these high pop servers. So that is all the information from Blizzard, from BlizzCon. Let me know what you guys think about the different changes and stuff I discussed. Overall, I am very happy with the announcements. A couple concerns, but dude, I am so excited about the 5-phase thing. I think it is huge. Overall, very excited for TBC. I think this was good news, and I think a lot of good announcements were made at BlizzCon. So I think things are looking good for TBC. And even some of the concerns I have aren't going to really be affecting endgame, which is what a lot of people care about. I think most people are going to still have a great time at endgame, and everything's going to go, without a hitch. Just, a couple things. Well, the economy stuff would affect it, but in Fresh, will affect how you enjoy endgame. But for the most part, the endgame stuff is going to be really good. So great news. Happy with the announcements at BlizzCon. And really excited for TBC. No news on the release date, no news on the beta release date or the pre-patch release date. But we'll have to see soon. They said soon TM. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you guys next time.